Although William Wade was thought to be guilty by the court at the end of the trial, the judge says that the prisoner at the bar has been extremely reprehensible, and in my opinion highly criminal, in placing this unfortunate girl in such a situation. He was found not guilty due to insufficient evidence. The ability of the judge and jury to hold two opposing ideas in their mind, tacit belief in defendant's guilt, and legal disbelief, speaks to the conscientiousness of the 18th century legal system. Constance Frost, Wade's apprentice, was forced to sleep in a damp cellar, and as a consequence became ill and died. In spite of the fact that the judge believes this to be the cause of her death, and there is ample witness testimony to support this, the surgeon's opinion that there was no sign that the cellar caused her death is enough to trump all else. There are two things of interest in this case. The first is the trust placed upon the surgeon's opinion, and the second is the moral undertones of the judge's final speech. It shows a legal system at conflict with itself. On the one hand, it wants to right injustice, and on the other it is shackled to the importance of evidence in the legal process. So, what we have is a court that believes the defendant is guilty but still must let him go. Sarah Matthews, the woman who found Frost's body, describes the anger she felt at the circumstances in which she found her. The child lay dead. I immediately went up to Mrs. Wade and told her I thought she was a brute to put any creature there. Caroline Drake, who lived next door, talks of Frost asking several times for food, and describes how she looked rather bloated in the face, fresh, but so very dirty that it was almost impossible to guess how she looked. Diana Crook, who lived nearby, also heard Frost complain of hunger. Mary Child, a lodger, thought that the cellar was not a place fit for a Christian to lay in. William Rolls, a neighbor, speaks of her condition leading up to her death. Every time she came she looked more miserable, and more like an object of pity. She was without shoes and stockings to her feet. With such testimony, logic would seem to dictate that it was her condition that was the cause of her death, but though the surgeon Archdale Harris concedes that it was a damp cellar, his dedication to complete certainty makes him unable to say that that was what caused her death. There was no sign of it, therefore I cannot upon my oath say that it was the cause. It is important to note, however, that Harris does not offer an explanation as to what truly caused her death. It is enough for him to say simply that it was not the cold and damp of the cellar. Although the judge is not fully convinced that it was not the cellar that caused Frost's death, he says that I think the charge against the prisoner might clearly be supported by evidence. Italics added. He defers to the surgeon's professional opinion, and says that there is not enough evidence to say with absolute certainty that the cellar caused her death. Instead, then, he offers a diatribe, demonstrating that the court was not only a place of legal proceedings, but for moral chastisement. It is my duty to repeat to you what I have before stated to the gentlemen of the jury, that placing this young woman to sleep in that cellar, with but scanty provision in such a place, where it was not fit for any person to sleep, and in such severe weather, was a conduct of great cruelty and criminality. The judge sees it as his duty to correct the prisoner's moral misstep. Even though the not guilty verdict has already been given, it is seen as acceptable and perhaps necessary to attempt to correct the prisoner and make him see that, though he is now free, he must act more morally in future. He goes on to say that the prisoner should not feel that he has been acquitted from a full persuasion of the innocence and rectitude of his conduct, but because there is simply not enough evidence to get a conviction. The judge and the jury, while acknowledging that Wade's behavior has indeed been reprehensible, must defer to the evidence.